जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Okay, Prabhu, could you please enable my screen sharing?
I made you the co-host. You can share now.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, great. So we are discussing from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, verse number 15. I'll read out the verse and you can follow. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Paundram Dadmo Mahasankham Bhima Karma Vrikodaraha Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham Bhima Karma Vrikodaraha Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham Bhima Karma Vrikodara. Okay, would someone like to chant?
Panchajanyam Rishikesha
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Paundram Dadamo Mahashankam
Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Panchajanyam Rishikesha
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Durandadamum Mahashankam
Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Panchajanyam Rishikesha
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Paundram Dadma Mahasankam Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Devadattam Dhananjaya
Paundakam Dadnu Mahashankam
Paundram Dadmo Mahashankham
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Bhima Karma Vrikodara
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
Panchajanyam Rishikesho
देवदत्तं धनञ्जया
देवदत्तधनञ्जय
पाण्ड्रं दद्मो महाशङ्खं भीमकर्मावृकोदरः
भीमकर्मावृकोदरः
पञ्चजन्यं ऋषिकेशे
पाञ्चजन्यं ऋषिकेशो
देवदत्तं धनञ्जय
देवदत्तं धनञ्जय
पुण्ड्रं दद्मो महाशङ्खं भीमकर्मावृकोदरः
भीमकर्मावृकोदरः. Okay, synonyms. Panchajanya, the conch shell named Panchajanya. Rishik Isha, Rishikesh, Krishna, the Lord who directs the senses of the devotees.
The Lord who directs the senses of the devotees.
Devadattam, the conch shell named Devadatt.
The conch shell named Devadatta.
Dhananjaya, Dhananjay, Arjun, the winner of wealth. Poundram, the conch named Pounder.
The conch named Poundra.
Dadmo, blue. Mahashankham, the terrific conch shell. Bhima Karma, one who performs Herculean tasks. Vrika Udaraha, the voracious eater. Bhima. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatt, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pounder. I'll read the translation one more time. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pounder. Purport. Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesha in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalist cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesha. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudan because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govind because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudev because he appeared as the son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandan because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandan because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Parthasarathi because he worked as charioteer of his friend Arjun. Similarly, his name is Rishikesha because he gave direction to Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjun is referred to as Dhananjay in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhim is known as Vrikodar because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hadimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells. Okay, so here in this chapter, it's basically setting the scene, and in the entire chapter, basically, we see how there are the two armies, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, right? And Arjun asks Lord Krishna to take the chariot in the middle of the battleground so that he can take a look at the armies, basically. So that's kind of what happens in this chapter. Here, in particular, as was the tradition before the war actually started, there used to be blowing of the conch shell, which was kind of a formal beginning of the war, right? Because in earlier days, wars were very, very regulated, right? It's not like you can go anywhere at any time and start a war. It wasn't like that, right? So there used to be proper rules and regulations within which a particular war used to be fought. So there was a particular area, in this case called Kurukshetra, right? So that was the designated battleground to fight the battles. And similarly, there used to be a particular timing between which you need to fight the war. In fact, after the sunset, after the war for the day was formally over, the two people from the two armies could actually freely go into each other's camp without fear of getting killed, right? So they used to respect all the rules and regulations, right? So here, in this case, we see how each of the warrior, primarily Lord Krishna himself, Arjun, and Bhim, right? They are blowing their conch shells, kind of declaring the war, right? And everyone is referred to with a particular name, right? And Prabhupada is pointing that Lord is being referred to by the name of Rishikesha. So the meaning of Rishikesha means, Rishik means senses, and Isha means the Lord or the controller, right? So in this case, he is referred to by the name Rishikesha because Krishna himself is actually the controller of our senses, right? As he says, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannavishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha, right? So he actually enters in his Paramatma feature into each individual's, inside each individual's heart, hridi sannavishto, right? Hridi means heart. So he himself enters in this Paramatma feature into everyone's heart. And it's only because of his potency, because he's the controlling power, we are actually able to remember, right? Sarvasya chaham hridi sannavishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam, right? So he's talking about remembrance, that is memory. Jnanam means knowledge, and apohanam means forgetfulness. If someone wants to forget Krishna, he's so kind that he even facilitates that, right? So sometimes when people of demoniac propensities who want to forget Krishna, right, and they just want to enjoy their material lives, Krishna actually facilitates that, right? So basically, to the degree to which we want to accept Krishna, he reciprocates accordingly, right? And he says that in Bhagavad Gita too. So because he is the supreme controller, he is the master, he is being referred to as Rishikesha here, and particularly because he's the Sarathi of Arjun, right? Or he is a chariot driver. So he in fact is the guiding star of Krishna in this, of Arjun here, right? So Arjun is basically seeking his guidance, as we would see in Bhagavad Gita. It's basically Arjun seeking his guidance by accepting his directions in terms of whatever he does in the battlefield, right? So because he is in the role of a guide, he's directing Arjun, that this term Rishikesh becomes particularly important, right? As Prabhupada is saying that similarly his name is Rishikesh because he gave direction to Arjun on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? And then Prabhupada is also pointing that how, you know, Krishna is known by various names. Although Krishna is the primeval name as referred to in throughout the Vedic literature, but Krishna at the same time is known by various names, and that is primarily based on the various pastimes that he did, right? For example, Madhusudan, because he killed the demon named Madhu, right? Similarly, Govind, because he gives pleasure to the cows and he's also the controller of the senses. Go means senses again, and it also means cows, right? So go also means the senses and it also means the cows. And because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses, both, right? That's why he's known as Govind. Similarly, he's called Vasudev because he is the son of Vasudev, or he's called Nanda Nandan, Yashoda Nandan, right? Because he is the son of Nanda Maharaj. He gave, you know, basically they were his foster parents, Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Ma, right? So, and similarly Arjun too, right? He's referred to as Partha Sarthi. I mean, is known as Parth because he is the son of Kunti, and Kunti is known as Pritha. So because he is the son of Pritha or Kunti, he is known as Parth, and that's why Krishna is also referred to as Partha Sarthi, because Sarthi means a charioteer, because he was a charioteer of Parth or Arjun in the battle of Kurukshetra. That's why he's also referred to by this name of Partha Sarthi. And similarly, we've also been given the information of the name of Bhimasena as Brikodar, right? Because he was a voracious eater. So as we all know, right, he used to eat a lot, but he was not just a voracious eater, but he also used to do Herculean tasks, right? He used to perform great tasks. In fact, all of the sons of Dhritarashtra in the battle, they were killed by Bhimasena only, right? So he was a voracious fighter, although he was a voracious eater, but he was a voracious fighter as well. So he's both. So here, Prabhupada is also referring to the impersonalist, right, who cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they're always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal, right? So this is actually a very good point, right? Because the term Rishikesh, which is being used for Krishna here, as he is the supreme proprietor of all of our senses. But this idea of senses is something that the impersonalists do not really acknowledge, right? In their understanding, the absolute reality, it is senseless or impersonal. So Prabhupada is referring to this understanding as incomplete knowledge, right? So that is just a portion. Basically, it is just a portion of the absolute truth, right? Vadanti tat tatvavidas tatvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti parmateti bhagwan iti shabdate. So this verse, it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, I think this is verse number 11, wherein it is referring to the three aspects of the absolute truth. So vadanti tat tatvavidas, right? The knower of the truth, people who know the absolute truth, right? They understand that supreme truth, and in three different aspects. What are those three? Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagwan iti shabdate, right? So Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. All these three terms are basically used to define the same absolute reality. And an example to understand this is the example of sun, right? So when you define sun, right, you look at the sun rays, right, the rays or the effulgence that is emanating from the sun. Then there is the sun globe, the disk of the sun, right? And then there is the person, which right now is Vivaswan, right? So there is an actual person, the sun god, basically, the sun disk, and then we have the sun rays, right? So Brahman is an energy of Krishna, the effulgence that is coming from Krishna, that could be equated with the sun rays in the case of the sun, right? And then Paramatma feature of the Lord is basically when Krishna, he expands, just like the verse that I mentioned before, right? Sarvasya Cham Hridi Sanna Vishto. So in his Paramatma form, he actually enters into every Jivatma's heart, right? And because he's sitting there, he actually provides us the ability to do whatever we are doing, right? If he's not there, we can't really do anything. So he's kind of the driving force. Along with Jivatma, Paramatma is always situated in our heart, right? And the example that is used sometimes is that of a tree, right? So if the body is considered to be the tree, in that body, there is a Jivatma and a Paramatma. Jivatma and Paramatma are referred to as the two birds, and one of the birds is enjoying the fruits that are there on that tree, which is the Jivatma, who is trying to relish the food, the fruits, right? And Paramatma, he is the witness, right? Or he's observing what the Jivatma is doing, right? And because he's witnessing all of that, whatever activities the Jivatma performs in this body, he kind of witnesses that. And those actions, if they are performed with the mindset of relishing the fruits of that, or exploiting the fruits of those actions, right? If we do that with that sense, then that result in another body, in the next birth, right? So sometimes, we see in some philosophies, particularly like in Christianity, they do not believe in reincarnation or the the next birth. And one of the arguments that they give is that no one saw your previous births, right? There is no accountability of the actions that were done, right? So it seems illogical. But actually, from the Vedic literature, we do get this information that Krishna is actually situated in every individual's heart in the form of Paramatma, and he's actually witnessing everything, right? So we do have witnesses, right? So so through that, in his Paramatma feature, Krishna is there in everyone's heart, and from him, our senses get the ability to do whatever we are doing, right? So therefore, he's also known as Rishikesh, or the controller of the senses. He provides us the ability to our senses to do what they are able to do, right? So in this Paramatma feature, right? So that could be compared to the sun disk. That is also not the absolute person, right? And then, and the Bhagwan is his personal form, the absolute reality, with all the feelings, the senses, all the gunas, basically, right? Everything is there in Bhagwan, or Krishna, and that could be compared with the sun god, essentially, right? So all of these three, we must understand that they are the same aspect of the one absolute reality, and people who actually know, right, the actual knowers of the truth, they understand it really well. There is no dispute about it. And in fact, if we see the lives of even some of the great impersonalists, right? For example, we see Shankaracharya. He is one of the foremost proponents of impersonalism, right? And if you speak with any impersonalist, their kind of the entire basis of their argument is based on the commentary that has been given by Shankaracharya, right? So he is one of the foremost proponents of impersonalism. But if you see Shankaracharya, he also said Bhaj Govindam, right? Bhaj Govindam, Bhaj Govindam, Govindam Bhaj Murmate. Naam Smarana Anya Upayam Nahi Pashyamo Bhavatarne, he said. So other than chanting the names of Govind, Bhaj Govindam, other than chanting the names of Govind, there is no other way for us to cross over this material world. He himself is acknowledging it, right? So in his mind, it is absolutely clear, although he's propagating the Brahman aspects of the absolute reality, which is not the absolute understanding, although it is not incorrect, it is absolutely correct. Brahman is a reality, right? But it is not the absolute. There is more to be known after one understands that I am Brahma, right? And that Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labde param, Krishna says, right? So once we realize that I am Brahma, I am not this material body, right? Once we get that realization, of course, that understanding is the source of happiness, but that should naturally lead one to the devotional service of the Lord, right? He does not say that that is the absolute platform. He is not saying Brahma Bhut Prasannatmana Shochati Na Kankshati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mai Labde Param. He is not saying that he achieves me, right? He says Mad Bhakti Labde Param. So he says that he achieves my devotional service, and what happens after he achieves the devotional service? Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati Yavan Cha Asmi Tatvata Tato Mam Tatvato Gyatva Vishate Tad Anantaram. Right? So once he becomes a devotee, after understanding that I am a Brahman, and by practicing the devotional service, right? Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati Yavan Cha Asmi Tatvata. Then he can realize who I am, right? After practicing the devotional service. And once he does that, he stays with me for eternity, right? So Bhaktya Mam Abhijanati Yavan Cha Asmi Tatvata Tato Mam Tatvato Gyatva Vishate Tad Anantaram. After he knows me in reality, he stays with me or lives with me forever, right? So for a devotee, he is referring to this, that he lives with me till eternity. But he does not say that a person simply by understanding that I am Brahman, I'm not this body, I'm this soul. He does not say that just by knowing that is good enough for one to be in absolute eternal bliss, right? He is not saying that. And he says that at various other places. Yogi nam api sarvesham madgate nantaratmana Shraddhavan bhajate yomam sa me yukta tamo mata, he's saying. So out of all of the yogis, what is the meaning of a yogi? A yogi means someone who is pursuing a union with the Supreme, right? Who wants to achieve the absolute platform. Yoga means union. Union does not mean that you merge into the existence, right? And that Krishna himself kind of explains in this verse. Yogi nam api sarvesham mat gaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam. So the one who within his heart is always thinking about me. Bhajan means who is always engaged through chanting and all the other activities, who's always thinking about me, right? Shraddhavan bhajate yoman. Out of love. Shraddha means in a favorable way. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. Sa me yukta tamo mata. He is most intimately. So yukta means engaged, and tamo is like a superlative, right? So sa me, he, and may, he's referring to himself, yukta tamo mata. In my opinion, Krishna is saying he is the one who is most intimately connected to me or attached to me, right? So he is not saying that someone who merges into me is most intimately, right? He's saying who is most intimately connected with me? The one who is always thinking about me within his heart, that person, right? So that is a clear reference to a devotee and how he is the topmost yogi amongst all the yogis, right? So that is very clear. That just simply understanding that I am Brahman, I am not this body, I am the soul, that is not the absolute platform, although it is not incorrect. It is absolutely right? But it is not the conclusion. One has to move on, and the natural progression should be to achieve the devotional service unto the lotus feet of Krishna. And he also says, Devi esha gunmai mama maya duratya mam evhi prapadyante maya mitam tarantite. So it is very, very difficult to cross over this material ocean, to cross over this material energy of mine. But the one who surrenders unto me, mam evhi prapadyante mayam etam tarantite. Only by surrendering unto me can a soul cross over this material energy of mine, right? So surrender clearly refers to the devotional service again, right? So there are no two ways about it. This is an absolute reality. And even the foremost preacher of impersonalist philosophy, Adi Guru Shankaracharya, he himself kind of acknowledges that when he says Bhaj Govindam, right? And in fact, the concluding verse of Bhaj Govindam is Nam Smarana Dhanyopayam Nahi Pashyamo Bhavatarane, right? Other than chanting the names of the Lord, there is no other way to cross over this material ocean. The same thing that Krishna is saying in the verse that I just mentioned, right? Devi esha gunmai mam maya duratya mam evhi prapadyante maya metam tarantite, right? So there are no two ways about it. It is absolutely clear that by rendering devotional service, we can cross over this material ocean and stay at the absolute platform in the service of Rishikesha, right? That is a definition of devotional service, right? If someone asks what is devotional service, right? So Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Rishikesha. When we engage our senses in the service of Rishikesh, or the controller of the senses. Rishikesha Sevanam. By engaging ourselves, the process of engaging ourselves, our senses, in the service of the controller of the senses. That is one of the definitions of devotional service. That is the way. Now the question is, how do we do that? How do we engage ourselves, our senses, in the devotional service of the Lord, right? So our acharyas have already given us a very, very nice process, right? Prabhupada so nicely has laid down the entire morning program, right? We have such a nice morning program. And, right, the way it is structured, right from, the time you get up, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning till the time you go to bed, every activity is centered around engaging our senses in the service of Rishikesh, or the Supreme Lord. Even at the time of taking prasadam, right, Prabhupada made sure that we realize and understand how fortunate we are that we are able to appreciate the Mahaprasad, right? So that we can engage our tongue and all of our senses in the service of the Lord. Mahaprasade Govinde, Namo Brahmani Vaishnave, Swalpa Punya Vratam Rajan, Vishwasa Naiva Jayate. Not worry, we are not breaking away for dinner right now, but I just wanted to kind of highlight this aspect, that how even in this prayer, Prabhupada made sure that we realize that Mahaprasad, Govind, Nam, Brahman and Vaishnav, Swa Alpa Punya Vratam Rajan. So people who have a very poor fund of good deeds or pious deeds, they can never ever develop Shraddha or Vishwas, right? Faith in these things, in the Mahaprasad, or the remnants of the foodstuffs that come from the altar after feeding Krishna, right? So in our faith, whatever faith we have in relishing Harinam, Govind, Krishna and his names, right? All of that is because we have definitely done some good deeds in the past. If we did not do that, there is no way we could have had that, right? So we should consider ourselves to be extremely fortunate. We should realize that this opportunity we will not get again and again. By some arrangement, because we did some pious activities, we have some sukriti, and therefore we have some taste, some faith in these things, in Mahaprasad, Govind, Namo Brahmani and Vaishnav, right? In the devotees, in the Lord, in his holy name, and the food remnants, right? Otherwise, if we didn't do that, there was no way for us to have any faith in these things, right? And we see that practically. There are so many people who we go out and preach Krishna. We try to preach Krishna consciousness, or we try to give them prasadam. We try to invite them to the temple. We try to tell them to chant, right? But it's just so difficult for some people to accept it. They just totally ignore it and they just want to go out, go away. They just cannot tolerate it. I've seen that myself, right? And that is in all of our experiences. So it is not feasible for everyone to be able to understand and relish Krishna consciousness. For people who are able to do that, we should consider ourselves to be extremely fortunate, and that good fortune happens after many, many lifetimes of hard work. Bahunam janmanamante jnanvan mam prapadyante vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha, Krishna says. Bahunam janmanamante, after the end of many, many lifetimes, after endeavoring for a very, very long time, Bahunam janmanamante jnanvan mam prapadyante. The people who are actually in knowledge, they surrender into me, right? Vasudeva sarvamiti sa mahatma sudurlabha. it is very, very rare to find a soul who understands the fact that Krishna is the absolute reality. So this happens after many, many lifetimes of endeavors. It's not like, it just happened. It is not no coincidence, right? There is no such thing as coincidence. We should consider ourselves to be extremely lucky and fortunate that we have been provided this arrangement and we have little appreciation towards these things. And now that we have that, what we should do, we should try our best. We should give it our best effort to kind of get up from the slumber, right? We are so attached to this material nature, right? We are kind of sleeping in the lap of Maya. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a very nice bhajan. Jeev jago, Gaura Chandra bole, Kota netra jao Maya, Pishachira kole. So Jeev jago, he's saying, right? he's waking up the sleeping soul, jivas. Jeev jago, Gaura Chandra bole. So Gaura Chandra, Lord Chaitanya, right? He's trying to push us. He's trying to wake us from our slumber. If we have been sleeping too long in the lap of Maya or the material energy of Krishna, right? We are just so attached to the material energy of Krishna, although this arrangement has been given to us, right? But it is very, very difficult for us to wake up from that slumber. So our acharyas, they have given us such a nice process. And even these, in Vaishnava bhajans, you'll find a lot of wisdom, right? We should take it up very sincerely. And we should try to remember the Vaishnava bhajans, because that also kind of helps us to absorb or understand and relish the mood of our acharyas, right? To understand philosophy is one thing, but in bhajans, we get the philosophy as well as the mood. We get both, right? And that just makes it more beautiful, right? Sometimes just understanding the philosophy could get a little dry, but when you mix a little bit mood into it, right? The mood of a pure devotee, when the mood of a pure devotee get mixed up with the philosophy, then it becomes, very, very relishable. We can really relish and enjoy it. So that therefore, bhajans are a very, very good way for us to do that. And we should try to make it a practice to kind of sing these bhajans in congregation or within our family somehow or the other, right? We should try to learn as much as we can. And, it is wonderful, very nice experience. And similarly, we have these bhajans and pretty much every activity that we do in Krishna consciousness, right? That has been given to us. The entire focus is so that we can engage our senses in the service of the Supreme Person, the Supreme Lord. So you see the entire process of offering Arati to the Supreme, right? We have, we start with the incense, which engages the sense of smell, right? Then we offer the ghee lamp, which engages again our sense of sight, eyes, and of course prasadam. And then we have flowers, flowers again engages the sense of smell. And then we have the holy water, which touches our skin, right? The sense of touch. And of course, food, we engage our tongue. Then, the chanting process, again, we engage the sense of tongue and the sense of taste and hearing, right? So pretty much everything that we do throughout our day, the entire activity, the entire program has been designed in a way that we can be Krishna conscious 24/7. There is no escape. By performing our day-to-day activities, simply by following the routine, right? It's like in an autopilot mode, right? You put the car in the autopilot mode and it will keep going. Although they still have to perfect that technology they are trying, right? But Prabhupada already did that for us. He already created this autopilot mode for us, and as long as we just sit in that car, we do not get out of it, right? Without doing much, we can be taken back to Godhead through this autopilot. We just turn it on, get up 4 o'clock in the morning, attend the morning classes, the morning chanting sessions that we have, that Raga Sindhu Prabhuji so nicely hosts every day. And then we have the Bhagavatam session. Rasaraj Prabhu hosts that. And then, we have so many activities in between. Every Sunday, we have this nice evening program. And then we have these Bhagavad Gita discussions every evening, right? So there is so much that has been provided to us, right? We have the scriptures. If we simply follow this process and make it a part of our day-to-day lives, it's like really sitting in a car which is in autopilot mode, and with just the effort of keeping ourselves sticking, if we can just stick ourselves in this car and stick ourselves to this routine, this autopilot mode is good enough for us to take us back home, back to Godhead. That is good enough for us to achieve perfection. And that's pretty much what we need to do. And, it has been made so convenient and easy. Otherwise, in previous ages, there are sages who used to sit on one leg for thousands and thousands of years, right? It is not easy for us to get out of this understanding, for us to get out of the slumber, for us to get out of material attachments. It is so extremely difficult. Even to think about it is unimaginable. We have been extremely fortunate that we have done some good deeds, that we have a taste towards it. But otherwise, if you just speak with people going on the street, most of the people are simply engaged just like animals in eating, mating, sleeping, defending. They are as if there is a spell, someone has put a spell on them. And although they can see that, today a person, like we saw Steve Jobs, he created such a huge company, and at such a young age, he just died one day, right? And when he died, he had to leave everything here. He could not take that Apple brand name that is worth billions of dollars. Actually, it recently reached $1 trillion valuation for a short time. I'm not sure where it is right now, right? So there is no way for him to carry all of that material property in the next world, in his next life. Whatever good deeds a person does, or whatever little progress that a person has made in understanding this perfect knowledge, only this can go forward. Swalpamasi api asya dharmasi trayate mahato bhayat. Even little progress that a person makes towards this direction in understanding devotional service, that is good enough for one to protect from the greatest fear, right? Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyaksh Avgamam Dharmam Susukham Kartum Avyayam. Avyayam means which can never be lost. So you can lose billions of dollars in one instance, because how much time does it take for a person to die? Just an instance is good enough, right? This body is so fragile, death can come at any point. But still, irrespective of that fact, which is irrefutable, at least until this point, there is no way for us to escape that, right? And everyone has to die. But we just do not pay any heed to it. We just engage in everything that would matter only till the time that death comes. After that, they don't know what will happen, right? But Krishna is promising that whatever little progress we make, whatever endeavors we do in this path of devotional service, avyayam, it is never lost. Whatever progress we make, we start from there, right? So this is the real wealth. And we should put in our best effort to gather as much of this wealth as possible. And in fact, make sure that we stick to this car that has been so kindly provided to us by Srila Prabhupada on the instructions of Sri Mahaprabhu Krishna himself, right? He is the warrior who came into this world, and he spread so many of his cars all over the world. And we just have to, and it's free of cost. There is no charge for it. There is no rent, nothing. All that is needed is for us to sit inside this car, turn on the autopilot mode, and just follow along. And that is good enough for us to reach the absolute reality, right? So it has been made so convenient that there couldn't be anything easier, right? And if we are not able to do that now, then it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult. That there cannot be a bigger misfortune than this. We have to realize that. And that is only possible by association of the devotees, right? We have to keep the association. We have to be thankful for everyone who's endeavoring to kind of make this arrangement and allowing us to utilize this facility that has been so kindly provided to us by our acharyas, and particularly Srila Prabhupada. So with that thought, I would pause and see if there are any questions or comments.
I like your comment on the autopilot every day, Abhiram. Divya Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji.
Because, my car stalls all the time and somehow the autopilot takes over. I literally like that analogy.
Thank you. Yes. It makes so much sense. And that's a fact, actually, right? Prabhupada has made everything so systematic. There is nothing that we have to do. We hardly have to apply our creativity. We just have to follow the program that has been laid out by Prabhupada. And as long as we do that, it's like an autopilot, right? Everything is given.
Yeah, and I'm sincerely saying that because literally, it happens to you, like you get down, either the pandemic or something is going on in your life. Literally, I mean, I get into such deep, kind of, down mode, and then suddenly the autopilot takes over,
Right. Yes, Mataji. That is so true.
Thank you, Prabhu, for wonderful class. Prabhu, you mentioned about the Brahman thing. So I had one question on the Brahman aspect. So in the Brahman aspect, do we get happiness? Because the reason I'm asking, right, in 1427, if you see the translation of 1427, there Krishna says, I am the basis of impersonal Brahman, which is immortal. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
And imperishable and eternal, and is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness.
Correct. Yes, absolutely, Prabhuji. So, and even in the verse that I mentioned, right, Brahma Bhut Prasannatma, right? He says, once one understands that I am Brahma, he is Prasannatma. He is actually happy at that point. So, Brahman, first of all, you have to understand what is Brahma, right? Brahman means na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuya ajo nityo shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So, this is the definition of Brahman, right? Basically the definition of who we actually are. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhuta bhavita vana bhuya. So today, right, the fear that we have is that I will die, right? And there are certain limitations that are attached to this body, right? It's like a tool that we are kind of encaged in a cage, right? If we understand ourselves as the body, we automatically bound ourselves to certain limitations, right? Because this body cannot sort of move at the speed of mind, for example, right? This has certain limitations. But once a person knows that I am Brahman, actually, no one can kill me. I'm eternal. I was always there. I will always be there. I'm eternal. So that understanding itself then becomes a source of happiness. You see my point? It's like you have a pot that is full of poison. So the happiness, if you get that pot emptied out with the entire poison, right, there is nothing in it. So that feeling itself, basically giving up of distress that is associated with this body, that one achieves when one understands that I am Brahman, right? But that is not good enough for us to be able to sustain in the long term. So for that time being, that gives us the happiness, because all of the stress that we have today is associated with the body, right? But once we understand that we are beyond this body, so that distress is gone. And as soon as that distress is gone, we come at a happiness platform. We are happy actually. And we consider every living entity to be the Brahman, right? Brahma Bhut Prasannatma na Shochati na Kankshati, right? So Shochati and Kankshati, Kanksha means to desire, and Shochati means to lament in terms of what was lost, right? So both of these things, desires and loss, both of these are associated with the body. And because we do not have any desires, and there is no question of loss because there is no body, right? We understand that we are eternal. So any pains associated with these two are automatically gone, right? Na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu. And we also consider everyone to be at that absolute reality, right? Everyone is Brahman. We have that understanding. But because our transcendental senses are not engaged in the service of Krishna, right? That is why I gave the example of a pot that was initially filled with poison. Now you take the poison out, so that distress is gone, so you would feel happiness. But until and unless you fill it with nectar, it is not complete, it is still empty. You see my point? So for us to be able to sustain, and in fact to be able to actually taste the nectar, the true happiness, we have to engage ourselves in the devotional service. So that is why the natural progression from that stage of Brahman is to move on to the stage of devotional service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. I think the example that you gave, right, those are kind of very relational. I can correlate with that. Means there is some happiness, not the absolute happiness.
Correct.
But Prabhu, one thing what we say, right, Sat, Chit plus Anand. So Sat, we say that there is the eternity. Sat plus Chit is kind of eternity and knowledge. Sat plus Chit plus Anand is that you get the Anand, the bliss in the ultimate state, which is the Bhagwan.
Yes.
So how do we relate with that? And the word here, it says, right, the ultimate happiness. So that's why it was just kind of a strike to that. In the shloka
You're talking about 1427, right?
Yes, Prabhu. Yes.
Brahmano hi pratishtha hem.
Because the last word, right, it tells Amratasya Avyasya cha Shashvatasya cha
Dharmasya Sukhasya Atmikasya cha. Right?
Yeah.
Sukhasya Ekantikasya.
Ekantikasya cha.
Right. Yeah. So here, why it says ultimate? Because as I mentioned the previous verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, basically, person who knows the absolute, he could sometimes refer to all these three, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan, all those three in the same spirit, right? Because in the absolute sense, all three are the same. So what Krishna is saying here, the first thing that he says is, I am the basis of Brahman, right? So Brahman does not have its independent existence, right? So Brahman, basically who we actually are, right? It is our identity, right? But who is the basis of us? As he says, Mamaivansho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. So we are his part and parcels, right? It is not that we had a beginning, right? It was not that we were born, but what it means is that we are dependent upon him, right? Or we are part and parcels of him. So that's why he's saying Brahmano hi pratishtaham. I am the basis of Brahman. And because he is the basis of Brahman, and when he says ultimate happiness, right? So that ultimate happiness, he's actually referring to once that Brahman is engaged in the loving service of Par Brahma, right? Simply by understanding that I am Brahma, he is not saying that, he's saying I am the basis of impersonal Brahma, which is the constitutional position of ultimate happiness, and which is immortal, imperishable, and eternal, right? So simply by understanding Brahman is not good enough, right? The verse that I previously mentioned, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So they are actually the knowers of the truth, use these terms interchangeably. And the point that Krishna is making here is that he is the basis, right? So once a person understands that I am Brahman, what he means is he actually knows that I am the basis of it. So he's in a way engaging with me directly, right? So when he engages with him, then that brings the absolute happiness. And we can also quickly read the purport. I'm not sure. The purport is actually a little.
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. I think that makes sense. Yeah. In the purport, I think Prabhupada mentions about the 4 Kumaras there, and then the Brahman. Yeah.
So we have many pastimes from Srimad Bhagavatam as well. And it could be a little confusing, right? And that's why that would
yes, yeah.
Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan, sometimes it could be used interchangeably. But the other verse that I mentioned, right, Brahma Bhut Prasannatma, there Krishna actually gives the progression, right? Brahma Bhut Prasannatma na shochati na kamshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labhate param. He says he achieves my devotional service. And then at a later point he says, Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan cha asmi tatvata. By performing the devotional service, he can know me in absolute reality, and then he engages in my devotional service and lives with me forever, right? So he's very clear on that.
Okay. Thank you, bro.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Thank you, Prabhu, for explaining so well. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you for
Hare Krishna.
the opportunity, listening patiently, Mataji.
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yes.
I have a question. So this is my first class.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question about like how each Pandava has like a name. So don't like Yudhishthira, Nakula, and Sahadeva have like a name like how Krishna do?
Mataji, your voice was not very clear to me. Could you please speak a little louder?
So we know how like Krishna has like a name, has like different names, like
Yes. Mhm.
yeah, like so do Nakula, Sahadeva, and Yudhishthira have any other like different names?
Yeah, I think they would, but I'm not really sure of what those names are. But in earlier days, it used to be a common practice that based on their activities or a certain achievement, they used to be called by a particular name, right? Here we get the examples of Bhim, Arjun, and Lord Krishna. But I'm sure even Yudhishthir, I think, don't really know the name of Nakul, Sahadev, and Yudhishthir.
Prabhu, Yudhishthir, Dharmraj, do we call Dharmraj also?
Dharmraj, yeah, Dharmraj, yeah. Sometimes people refer to him as Dharmraj because he was sort of the incarnation of Yamaraj, right? Who is an expert at religious principles, executing the religious principles. So that's why Yudhishthir was known as Dharmaraj. But Nakul and Sahadev, I'm not sure. But I'm sure there would have been some names for them as well. It used to be a common practice.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so I think it's 8 o'clock. I will pay obeisances to all the Vaishnavas and thank you so much for listening so patiently. Vancha kalpatarubhascha
पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव
कोटि वैष्णव की जय श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय अभिराम प्रभु की जय
श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.